Joining us now, Husam Zomlot, the head of the Palestinian mission to the United Kingdom. He's a key advisor to the Palestinian Authority president and the former head of the PLO General Delegation to the United States. Husam, thank you so much for joining us. President Biden says he supports what's called a two-state solution, Israel and a new state of Palestine. But on this trip, did you hear any specific action on President Biden's part to make that two-state solution a reality?
Well, that was an important visit, meeting President Abbas, having that very frank conversation, also visiting occupied East Jerusalem, making sure that he would be unaccompanied by any Israeli official or otherwise, removing the Israeli flag, visiting a hospital, striking a chord with the people they received them, the Palestinian people, talking about the Palestinian plight, the injustice that has endured for a long time for the Palestinians, and then going also to the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem, meeting church leaders, hearing their situation, the suffering they face, especially in terms of their properties taken by Israel in Jerusalem and Bethlehem. So overall, that was an important visit. However, if you're asking me about reality, I'm sure President Biden has also seen that the only reality there is the one-state reality, which the human rights world now are talking about in terms of apartheid, from the Human Rights Watch in the US to the UK-based Amnesty International to Israel's B'Tselem and the numerous Palestinian human rights organizations. This is the reality. And to break away from that reality, to end that reality, your question is the absolute right question. We need action rather than just statements. What President Biden said in the press conference was absolutely clear: the support for two-state solution on the 67 borders, that Jerusalem is a final status issue, that unilateral action must cease, that Palestinians must get equal measures of freedom and dignity. All this we agree with, but that needs action. And action would need reversing all the destructive, vindictive policies of the Trump administration. He should have visited the newly reopened Consulate General in East Jerusalem. Unfortunately, that did not happen.
Well, hold on a minute, because I want to ask you about that. Do you think President Biden is any closer today to reopening the U.S. diplomatic consulate in East Jerusalem, or for that matter, reopening the PLO office in Washington, D.C., where you served and where I got to know you? Both were shut down during the Trump administration.
Regrettably, Wolf and you and I have met several times, and we are very frank and straight shooters. The Biden administration has simply given Israel a complete veto power over these very U.S. sovereign matters. The US Consulate General has been there since 1844. It reflects the bilateral relations of the Palestinians and the Americans, the Palestine and the US. And unfortunately, so far, Israel has not removed its veto. So that question needs to be directed to the US administration. And in fact, the lack of opening of such a very important diplomatic mission is also indicative of how serious the administration is about the two-state solution and how much they are willing to spend political capital as opposed to rhetoric and statements. The Consulate General is the key matter, because if you believe in the two states, you need two embassies. If you really believe in the 1967 borders, then there is one missing representation. As for the PLO office, Wolf, the administration need to work hard with the Congress to de-designate the PLO from the so-called terrorist list. This is really ridiculous. I mean, the president of the US had just met the president of the PLO, the president of the state of Palestine. Since 1987, the PLO has been designated by the Congress as a terrorist organization. After Oslo has happened, numerous bilateral agreements, hundreds of millions of US aid to Palestine, yet that designation remains there. So absolutely, there are so many things to be done, including stopping the bleeding. I mean, talking about the two-state solution, when actually the two-state solution is on the deathbed, if not dead already, without stopping the bleeding, which is the illegal settlements. Now we are having almost 750,000 Israeli illegal settlers, without tackling the issue of ethnic cleansing like happening in Sheikh Jarrah or Masafir Yatta in Hebron, without tackling the real issues, then we are simply giving a license for the very alarming and urgent situation to simply continue spiraling out of control, as happened in May and as happened last year in May during the Sheikh Jarrah and followed by the war in Gaza.
Husam Zomlot, thanks so much for joining us. Good to get your perspective.